Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline, and I will be discussing my capstone on the resiliency in the Palisades. So my capstone focuses on the resiliency in the Palisades post the 2025 wildfire that began on January 7th and lasted until January 31st. This fire was one of the worst in California's history, destroying 6,837 structures and damaging 973 others. I began my mesh journey studying wildfires and their impacts. Therefore, I jumped at the opportunity to share and highlight the impacts that a fire would and could have on our community in real time. I wasn't exactly sure what to focus on at first when it came to picking a research question, and I struggled to create a research question, but ultimately came up with the following question: how do people in the Palisades experience resiliency in the wake of the January 2025 wildfire? So how can a tiny spark elicit such destruction to one community? The Palisades community itself was a bit more susceptible than others. One reason for this is that there were no real preventative measures taken, despite nearby communities such as Malibu experiencing multiple severe fires. The Palisades were fortunate to not have experienced a fire event prior to January of 2025, as noted by a representative from the Pacific Palisades Historical Society. He described that the nearby brush on the hills that surrounded the Palisades and within the Palisades were notably not maintained, which led to a large amount of kindling being built up. This further allowed for the fire to spread at a faster rate. In addition, the community has been experiencing a shift in its overall community base due to the relocation of many affluent, wealthy individuals, namely Hollywood elite. These members notably began to buy up the smaller 1 to 2 bedroom multi-generational homes and were demoing them to build larger homes on the small parcels of land, particularly in the community of the historic Alphabet Streets. By building these larger homes on small parcels of land, the fire was able to spread from structure to structure with ease. There also were infrastructural concerns that caused issues with evacuations, especially with many neighborhoods having small, single roads in and out. This led to gridlocked roads, causing citizens to have to run on foot. There have been no direct plans on changing these roads to be more conducive for potential evacuations, which has caused some strife with community members. So what factors make a community and its individuals resilient? Well, when doing my research, I found that there are a number of factors that can help determine a community and its constituents' resiliency. The first set I examined were physical and governmental factors. These factors can include forced and/or self-determined displacements or relocation. It has been found that continued forced displacements can lead to an individual having a lack of connection to the community, thus decreasing an individual's ability to grow and build up their resilience. In addition, decisions made by governmental officials and policymakers, such as the County of LA and FEMA, can ultimately affect the ability for individuals to rebuild within the community. These financial decisions are outside of an individual's control, making it harder to predict the resiliency of each individual and even the community as a whole. In addition to governmental and physical factors, spiritual and mental factors can play a role in individual resiliency. While many individuals still are undergoing the effects of the Palisades fire and might not have the hindsight to portray accurate reads, I did find some studies from after the Alberta, Canada wildfires, where they discussed and found that individuals with more spiritual ties had a higher resiliency and tended to have less mental health effects from the fire events. Moving forward, art and historical factors play a significant role on a community's general makeup. This is true for the Palisades, where many individuals were relieved when the infamous Getty Museum was spared in the blaze. However, despite being spared, many other historical sites were lost, causing individuals to call for art pieces, whether at the Getty or other places, to be recorded digitally, so if they are physically lost, they can still be recorded and loved for eternity. So my research mainly consisted of archival research with research articles from prior fires and examinations of resilience, as well as current event newspaper and magazine articles. I was also able to conduct a few interviews and attended a community meeting in which the resiliency of the Palisades was the main topic. I was only able to conduct a few interviews and was unable to go up to the Palisades due to the Palisades still being under strict evacuation orders, with passes still being required and only being given out to certain authorized contractors and very few residents. Thus, I used creative means, such as the creation of a community map seen on screen, to examine potential community resilience. I highlighted what I found to be important sites of the Palisades fire, including the start of the fire at the Skull Rock, significant historical sites such as the Palisades Charter High School and the Topanga Ranch Motel, which were used as film sites for many movies and TV shows, as well as places for writers to convene for inspiration. Another place highlighted was the Westwood Recreation Center. I chose this site as it serves as a symbol for hope and resilience, as it was the first evacuation site for individuals affected in the Palisades, providing temporary housing for 230 individuals, as well as collecting and distributing food, clothing, and personal hygiene products to its community members. Speaking of resilience, the Palisades community has already begun showing signs of resilience, such as the creation of many organizations and groups such as Resilient Palisades. In addition, the Theater Palisades, that was created to have a place to write and perform original plays, has already put on its first production that began on February 28th of 2025. This was done with the donation and assistance of local businesses, schools, and theater groups. While they were unable to perform at the Pearson's Playhouse Theater, as shown on screen, they were able to demonstrate that community and its individuals have the capacity and capability to resume semi-normal activities that are important or significant to the Palisades community. Since the rebuilding of the Palisades is not set to complete until the next 3 to 5 years, it is hard to determine the complete resilience of the Palisades community. What I found thus far is that the Palisades community is known for undergoing many cultural shifts, from it being a small-town Methodist community to one that is more commercialized and affluent. From the interviews I conducted, many interviewees are predicting that the Palisades will lose even more of its cultural charm, such as the loss of mom-and-pop shops, due to the increasing wage gap and the cost to rebuild. There's some hope for some smaller businesses who are culture important, as there are a few landlords that are working diligently to help these small businesses to return to the Palisades. Despite some individuals not being able to return or choosing not to return to the Palisades, all Palisadians have the capability to demonstrate resilience. This is because they still may have the means to build community ties, uphold spirituality, and work towards maintaining their health and happiness. All in all, resilience is a broad, overarching term and can be determined in many ways. However, the dedication that many have shown thus far and the continued support of the community for each other shows a promising outlook for overall resilience.